Hello, and welcome to our first ever Games Leadership Retrospective, an online series of short talks that cover topics around experiences and learnings that have shaped the leadership abilities of people in the video games industry. I'm Melissa Phillips. I'm the director of the Games Leadership Network and Academy, and I've volunteered to go first. But we've got a really lovely lineup of industry professionals who will be joining us over the next few sessions to bring a real mix of experience and new ideas and observations into what it's like to navigate the different areas of the games industry. Well, I'm going to share a learning that I've had only in the last few years, which has really helped me recognize this, oh, there's a learning for me here moment. But also how I use that to then check if there might be a learning for others in that same moment. So I've been in games now for over a decade. And I remember there was a huge amount of pressure at the start of my career to solve everything. Like every problem that came up was mine to solve. I was quite aggressive about that. And I was also praised for it, for coming in and like throwing myself at a problem, oh, young person's here to take on all this pressure. And I would give so much time and energy into trying to make my dealing with the problem so efficient that nobody else was needed to think about it. And this has kind of become my signature move over time. I come in, I fix a thing, I don't complain, and everything's good. And I think that will probably resonate with a lot of people, especially in operational roles or production. Most of us don't enjoy conflict. There's a general feeling that we want to come in and fix things and settle things quickly. And if we peel back the layers of this further, then I can kind of add in that I'm also a real super anxious little button. I'm a real people pleaser, which is a classic ingredient for burnout. So if I look back now, I gave a huge amount of my self-worth around being that person that could come in and then very quickly and quietly solve these problems and get that conflict tidied up for you really nice and neat. And if this sounds like you, then you might already have an idea of what happens next. But for me, it was exhausting and it was stressful and ultimately unsatisfying to keep putting so much of myself out there in order to just try and stabilize everything around me. And it meant that I didn't ask for help. I was terrible at stating my boundaries. And worse, I would hide when I wasn't coping by just working harder. And like I said, it was only in the last few years that I've really started to look and own this side of my personality. This wasn't one of those overnight instant changes that I spoke about earlier. This was definitely a lot longer and a lot more work on both myself personally and professionally. And I've been coaching one-to-one now for quite intensively for the last 2 years. And I was doing that before, but it really came into focus in the last 2 years. And the coaching process is interesting because it's about helping to try and provide an environment for a client where change might happen, or at least to start to allow a client to gain that awareness about the different choices that they have available to them. And a big part of coaching, if you follow the traditional methods, is that the coach shouldn't be the problem solver in this scenario. It's about trusting that the client has the answers that they already need inside of them. And this is the total opposite in terms of methods and techniques that I use when I've got my consultant hat on, for example. So when I'm consulting, I'm being paid to come in and provide suggestions and solutions and to help drive change in a more active way. I'm advising on what I think are the best next steps. And then somewhere in the middle for me sits mentoring, which is a much grayer area, often involving some sort of skewed power dynamic where somebody with more experience, it's that word again, is matched with somebody less experienced. And now in each of these scenarios, I want to provide the other person with a positive experience. It doesn't matter what hat I'm wearing. But in all 3 of these scenarios, I noticed that I was coming up against frustrations that were often the result of my people pleasing and my problem solving personality. So if I was coaching, I wanted to push for change quicker. If I was consulting, I wanted to provide a list of actions and see them make the studio more successful and have that happen quickly. And if I'm mentoring, I want to find that person funding, or I want to get them their dream job. And here is the realization that was the hard pill for me to swallow. Not every problem is yours to fix. I've become so obsessed over problem fixing as a leader that I actually wasn't allowing for change and experience to work their magic. I was getting in the way of being conscious and trying to control the timing of change. And if you're like me, then you hear not every problem is yours to fix, and you will instantly go, oh, but I can try, right? Just watch me. Like, every problem might not be mine to fix, but what if I fix this small problem or this big problem over there? Or imagine how much better it could be if I just tried. So I'm going to reframe this phrase for people that are like me so that our brains can stop getting so defensive about it. So how does this feel? Whose learning is this? And this is the phrase that has helped me like stop me dead in my tracks when I use it. So how do I use it? Well, I use it anytime that I feel the urge to jump in on a meeting or give a comment to a colleague in a one-to-one or a coaching session, or with a mentee when I'm just about to solve their problem for them with a 5-point list, or when I'm about to react to a decision by immediately shooting it down with all the problems that I can spot. Just take a moment and I ask myself to really think about whose learning is this? Because sometimes I've realized it's not mine. And that's the difference for me. Before now, I had assumed that everything was for me, that my experience of my career was there to give me learnings that helped me better myself and would therefore make me more experienced. But actually, I was wrong in that. My experience allows me to understand that not everything is about me and proving that I can fix it. And so if I can just pause and ask myself this question, then there might just be a brilliant moment where I can actually recognize that what I'm experiencing is being a part of someone else's learning. And I'm starting to wrap up and get to the end of this short talk now. But before I do, I just want to be really clear that this comes with some caveats. And I want you to use whose learning is this in a healthy and constructive way. So here are some do's and don'ts about how I use it. So ways to do this are to notice how it makes you feel in that moment. And by in that moment, I mean, I want you to recognize like what triggered your realization that this could be a learning. Did you immediately want to charge in and had to stop yourself? And that was that realization of, oh, I've stopped myself from getting too involved in this. Did you feel maybe resistance for not giving your feedback immediately? I'm just curious about like, what's that feeling for you? Get really curious about it. Dig in. And the next do that I've put here is to remember to remain invested in the person. This isn't about becoming disinterested once we recognize that it might not be about us. This can happen. We might get excited to share our knowledge and be ready, like with all this knowledge, I'm going to teach you. But then we realize that maybe this isn't the place. And then we immediately get turned off and we retreat back into ourselves. And to break that habit, instead, I want you to think about understanding what your new role might be in this situation. And all of us like can lean into getting better at recognizing those learning opportunities, not just for that person, but also for your own growth as a leader. Like that pause, that stop, own personal growth to see where you can add value. So if I'm the mentor in this relationship and my experience is needed, then how can I start to ask the right questions back to my mentee to allow for that growth? And now we're in a mutual learning situation where I'm actually learning to become a better teacher and they are improving by learning from me. And then a big no-no for me is using this as a get out clause or a way to manipulate the situation. So don't use this as a way to shirk responsibilities or make excuses for not intervening sooner if you see a major problem, especially if you're in a leadership position or the outcome could be intensely damaging for a person. This is where I see people go, oh, well, I wanted you to figure this out the hard way, or you had to learn this way. Nobody helped me, so why should I get involved? You know, it's important that you fail. That's important. You still have a duty of care. So not every problem is yours to fix, but we also don't abandon our teammates. Instead, we're creating boundaries. We're being clear about what is our responsibility and sharing, offering experience to them when we see opportunities for growth. But that comes with the understanding that those around us can also reject that and not be maybe in the position to be open to that learning, and that's okay too. We don't just abandon them for that. Some good next steps on how I would put this forward so that we can bring this into the studios where you are now. So number one, start to notice where learning is happening in your studio. Where are the places that it's thriving naturally or it's getting stifled? Sometimes this can happen by well-meaning activity. This doesn't always have to be malicious. Sometimes learning gets squished because, we've been through the Michael Bungay Smith tell it monsters, the monsters. What monster am I? I'm definitely a tell it monster. I want to rush in and tell you how to do the thing. And it's definitely well-meaning from a good place, but not always helpful. So get curious about how learning is happening in your studio. Where is it getting stifled? Where is it thriving? What are the opportunities? Number two, recognize the traps for yourself as a leader. So what might you be avoiding or ignoring for yourself or your team that close down these opportunities for a wider, deeper learning? Time is money, right? Sometimes we don't have time. I made that mistake just last week. I don't have time to do this. Dan said to me, he goes, why don't you just pass this over? Why are you doing this yourself? I don't have time. It would just be quicker if I do it myself. No, that's, and I caught myself. I was instantly embarrassed by it. I'm like, oh, that was a really dumb response. And I realized where it came from, but I realized that was the trap I was putting myself in as a leader. And then finally, I'm going to challenge you to bring that whose learning is this, or a phrase similar, whichever that you're comfortable with, into your everyday routine and just start to see what happens. If you're that person that wants to rush in, can you ask yourself, whose learning is this? And slow down that process and notice whether there's an opportunity here. And this all takes practice, which can take time. And we know that time and greater awareness might just help us get better at learning itself. Of course, I've got to get my plug in here. So if you're interested in finding out more about our courses, workshops, training or coaching offered by the Games Leadership Academy, then please do go and check out the website. And if you're interested in finding out about our brand new course that's releasing soon, then please make sure that you sign up to the newsletter to be the first to hear about it. And you can find out more information about how we can work more closely together in the future, all on the website. And then finally, a shout out to get more involved in these Games Leadership Retrospectives. We're going to be running these more regularly as part of our 2024 free program with the Games Leadership Network. We'll be heading over to the Games Leadership Network Discord after this session to continue the conversation. So please do check us out over there. And we are welcoming speakers to submit talks. So in fact, our next speaker will be Mary Nolan, who will be sharing her experiences on the ups and downs of puzzle game popularity. Thank you for giving me a bit of your time, and I hope you'll join us again for another one soon.